All right. Let me make sure you're seeing all this. All right. So, we're going to learn about the authoritarian libertarian spectrum. Now, technically, there are two spectrums involved, but we are only looking at the structures and not necessarily the attitude towards law. So, let's start off by going from most authoritarian to most libertarian. So it works like this. Right here at the top, we have absolute monarchism. So, absolute monarchism. All right, so absolute monarchism has this feudalistic structure that is organized by a pyramid. It typically has three classes. The royal class, the noble class, noble, and the peasant class, peasant. The royal class has absolute power over the noble class, and the noble class has absolute power over the peasant class. All right? So, basically, think of it this way. One ruler or one group of rulers has absolute power over the entire country. Basically, going back to the crown. So, one ruler or one group of rulers has absolute authority over everybody at the end of the day. And some people just so happen to have some authority over most other people. So, basically, it is the greatest elitist system that could ever exist. But there is something farther down. So that's absolute monarchism. Absolute monarchism is very simple. Just one person or one group of people has absolute power over everybody. All right? So let's take a look at dictatorship. All right? So we have dictatorship, all right? So dictatorship is basically where there is one person that has absolute control, but that person is appointed by elected officials. So you still have the pyramid structure, but it's more blocky. It's like a blocky pyramid. So you have the dictator up at the top, and you have the bureaucrats, and then you have the people. All right? So basically, the people elect the bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats appoint the dictator. All right? But when the dictator's in power, the dictator does have almost all control. Doesn't have complete control. He can't change this to this. He can't do that. Or this to this. But he does have control in basically every other aspect. So basically, it's an absolute monarch with limitations. All right, and then let me get out my color for a hot minute. Then we have democracy. All right, so democracy doesn't necessarily, democracy gets rid of that top. So basically you have the blocky pyramid, but it's missing its top. So in that sense, you have the government and you have the people. All right? So the people elect the government, but the government has absolute power. So let's say, let's put a little equal sign, vertical equal sign up here. All the power. Underline a couple of times. All right. So we got the people who elect the government, but once you're a member of the government, you got all the power. All right. Basically, that's all democracy is. However, it can get a little bit more complicated depending on the type of democracy. Moving down the line, we've got monarchy. Now, monarchies are very rare. Monarchies are a very rare system. You don't find them often. They have existed, and even some variations of monarchy have existed. But basically, in order to understand monarchy, we have to understand democracy, all right? So we're just going to say, we're just going to say this. We have to understand the three powers of governance. All right? Three powers of governance equals 1. All right? So we got number 1. We have legislative power. All right, so legislative power means you make the laws. All right, so if you have legislative powers, that means you have the ability to make laws. Number 2, executive. Executive power. All right, so executive power, that basically means that you have the ability to either veto or confirm any laws that are made by legislative powers. Now, a lot of times in a democracy, there will be something called a separation of powers. That's very famous in a lot of democracies. So there will be a separation between the legislative branch and the executive branch. Take, for example, the United States. The legislative branch is Congress, while the executive branch is the president. All right, the president and the vice president make up the executive branch. So basically, in order to have executive power, you have to have the ability to say yes or no, to basically say, if you don't like a certain law that the legislative branch has made, if you're a member of the executive branch, you can say, no, that law's not going to be made. And vice versa. Basically, you are the final step in confirming or denying a law. All right? So, number 3, we have judicial. All right, now judicial is a little bit different from the United States, all right? So we're not just talking about the judicial branch of the United States. We're talking about all crimes, all trials, everything. So basically, judicial power is the ability to convict and sentence any lawbreakers. All right? So the ability to convict and sentence basically anyone you want to. For any reason. Now, there is something. The thing is, what a monarchy is a monarchy is any form of government. So, any form of gov dot that gives over one or more of the three powers to the people. All right? So, basically, if the people, let's say it could be the peasant class, it could be the people class, it could be the papal class. So it could be the peasant class in an absolute monarchy, the people class in a dictatorship, or the people class in a democracy. If the people have controlled the justice system, it's actually a monarchy. Doesn't matter the structure, it's a monarchy if the people have full control over the judicial system. Same applies to the executive. If the people have executive power, which by the way this happened. So let me give you an example. Communist Libya was structured in a dictatorship, but they gave executive power to the people. So Libya was a monarchy. All right? So Libya gave over executive power even though it was under a dictatorial structure. All right? So basically what that meant was that any laws that the government, aka the dictator or the bureaucrats, made, the people had the ability to say, no, we're not going to do that. On top of that, the people also elected the bureaucrats, which elected the dictator. So the people had a lot of power. All right? People had a lot of power considering most other dictatorships. Now, I will say the people were not entirely free. They were not entirely free. That it wasn't ideal, all right? But it still classifies as a monarchy, and they did have more freedoms than your average dictatorship, all right? So, now let's move on from monarchy over to, which color do I use? Let me think. How about I use red? Well, I've already used red. Never mind. How about I use orange then? All right. Now we have anarchy. All right. All right. So anarchy is very interesting. Anarchy basically means that there is no government structure. So there is just the people, nothing else. Just the people, nothing else. All right? Usually, there are lots of ways to be an anarchist, but the most common way is via direct democracy and an opt-out system. So what is direct democracy? Basically, direct democracy all right, direct democracy means that the popular vote covers all three powers. All right? So, all three of these powers, the people vote for. So, in order to be anarchist, you not only have to be monarchist, you have to give over all three powers to the people. You see, under a monarchy, all you have to do is give over one, which is usually what happens. But on anarchy, you have to give over all three. It has to be given over in the vote. The thing is, there's a big misunderstanding in regards to what anarchy is. A lot of people think that anarchy is chaos. Anarchy is not chaos. Now, that is a definition established by the enemies of anarchism in an attempt to make anarchism less desirable. But in reality, anarchy is not chaos. There are people that have legislative power, have executive power, and have judicial power. It's just that those people are everybody. Everybody is those people. So it does serve as a big corruption reduction measure because everybody's like that. And most of the time, you have an opt-out system. All right? So, there are many different opt-out systems. All right? Basically, an opt-out system is the ability to opt out of a collective decision. My goodness, I can't spell today. Basically, usually how this happens is through a plurality of force, which means you have a fractured military, and a fractured police force. All right? So basically, under anarchy, there are no rulers. It is just the people. The people have either the most power or all the power. Ideally, the people would have all the power. Typically, that is done through direct democracy, where the people gain all three of these powers. They gain legislative power, which means they have the ability to make laws. They gain executive power, which means they have the ability to say which laws should be enacted. And they have judicial powers, meaning they have complete control over who gets sentenced and what their punishment is. All right? Then it is also done via an opt-out system, which is the ability to opt out of a collective decision. So let's say you disagree with, let's do a controversial one, all right? Let's say you disagree with gay marriage, all right? Let's say you disagree with gay marriage. Under anarchy, you can opt out of the gay marriage law. You can basically live in a community where gay marriage is not allowed. All right? You have that ability. Now, other people also have that ability. Other people have the ability to opt out of any laws that you might want to make. So, under this opt-out system, basically everybody wins because everybody ends up getting close to their ideal as long as they maintain the direct democracy. Typically, on most cases, the opt-out system is the plurality of force, which means that you get to choose which military and police force you are living under. All right? So, let's review. All right? Let's review, and let me choose a different color. Let me choose yellow. All right? Yellow for review. So, absolute monarchism means the royals have all power. All right? Royals have all power, and it trickles down. Trickles down like a sifter, all right? Draw a little sifter here. Sifting stuff out, trickling down the hierarchy. So all the power goes here, and some of it trickles down. And that's it. That's all absolute monarchism is. It's just people at the top who have all the power, some of it trickles down, and so that's what causes this hierarchy to happen. With a dictatorship, the people are where the dictator gets his power first, but he still gets all the power. So, the people, all right, give the dictator power using the bureaucrats as a middleman. All right? So I'm going to X this out. So they're using the bureaucrats as a middleman. Because they're giving the dictator all the power, that basically means that there is a little bit of trickle down, but everybody has a base level of power. All right? Let me fill down that base. So there is the trickle down mechanic, but everybody gets a base level of power. And the reason they get a base level of power is because the people give the dictator some of their power using the bureaucrats. All right, now in a democracy, there is no ruler. There is no single dictator. There is only the top. Now, the people, again, give all their power to the government. Now, the government has all this power. The thing is, basically, there is no middleman in democracy, which means that the people do have a larger reservoir of power. All right, and there's more of a trickle down. So, democracy is inherently better than a dictatorship, and a dictatorship is inherently better than an absolute monarchy. All right? Monarchy can be any of these things as long as the people get a really big reservoir of power in that they either have legislative, executive, or judicial power, or any combination between the three. Which, by the way, includes all three. You can have all three of these things fulfilled. You can give the people all three of these things and still be a monarchy. What transitions into anarchy is where you remove one of these structures. Typically, it's a democratic structure, but it can be a dictatorship or it can be an absolute monarchy. Basically, a monarchy makes things better. Most monarchists do advocate for a democratic style of government, which is why monarchy is placed here and is not like a modifier. But it can be any of these things. But anarchy is where you just got the people. There's no one else but the people. All right? And not only do they have all three, so it's the ultimate monarchy, you get rid of the government, and the way you do that is through direct democracy and an opt-out system, which is usually a plurality of force, which means a fractured military and a fractured police. Meaning you get to choose the military and police force that you're a part of. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want any more content. See y'all!